So let's quickly go back what we discussed, a quick recap on the last session, right? So we're discussing about the rule-based workflows. So when it comes to rule-based workflow, so there are three decision tables that so we need to whenever you assign workflow that is ending with the 86. So let me show you. So so before that change request type. So create change request type. ZP is our CR type. So ZP11. So here, so I'll just give some description here. Rule-based workflow. Okay. So for this particular change request type, we assign 86 is the workflow. So it's a W star ending with 86. So whenever you are assigning this 86 workflow, that means basically it comes under the rule-based workflow, and it's our responsibility to fill everything. Like we need to prepare these kind of three decision tables. Okay, so when it comes to these three decision tables, there's something called single value decision table, so which contains the end-to-end flow of your the workflow, like we discussed, right? So you have requester, approver, and then activation and workflow complete, and also there is a revision step. So likewise, you need to first draw this particular workflow how it works, and for this one at each step, so the rectangle box indicates the steps at each step. So what are the actions that will happen, and if it happens, let's say approve happens, what should be the next step? If reject happens, what should be the next step? So that's what we need to basically draw the complete end-to-end path for this particular workflow in this single value decision table. So that's where we feel like if requester submits, it goes to the approver step, and at approval step, there are two options. Approver can click on approve or reject buttons. If he clicks approve button, the next is activation. If he clicks reject button, the next step is revision step. And again at activation, there are two cases we are handling. So activation success and activation failure. And at revision step, we are handling resubmit and withdraw. And after withdraw, it will go to the rollback step. And from then, finally, it goes to the workflow completed step. So it contains the end-to-end path. Now from this list, we need to identify what are the steps where user action is required. Okay, so in this diagram, right? So requester, of course, the workflow starts it once the requester submits that one. Apart from this requester step, okay, so where the user action is required is the approver step and revision step. So at these two steps, we need some user action, right? So that's where so once requester submits, it goes to 90, which is an approver step. At approver step, we will identify this with a conditional yes one and go to the user agent decision table corresponding to conditional yes one. Here we need to specify two things. One is at approver step, who will be the agents that we need to assign so that they can take the action. So, and also there is something called step type. So we'll discuss what is this step type. Okay. So here we are assigning the agents. So in user agent decision table, we will assign two information. One is who will be the agents at that particular step that we need to assign, and what options that I wanted to display to that particular user. So when I say options, so like for approver level, I wanted to display approve and reject buttons. Okay, so those options we specify in terms of something called step type. So how it will we will specify that we will discuss this. Okay, so here two things. One is step type. Step type represents what options you wanted to display to the user at that level, and who will be the agents at that particular step. So those two information we need to assign where for all the user wherever that user action is required for those steps. Okay. Similarly, non-user agent decision table. So once you populate that user agent entries here, the remaining entries are will qualify for non-user agent decision table, which means once approver approves, it goes to the activation step. That is nothing but conditional yes to. Take this conditional yes to, and activation step is something like we need to initiate the activation process. So when you are initiating that activation process, which means there should be some ABAP code in the background that should trigger, that should execute and initiate the activation process. So that entire process is captured under something called process pattern. So once you assign here process pattern 5, there are two process patterns are there, 5 and 6. So if you assign 5 process pattern, what are 6 process pattern that actually executes that activation process, it initiates the activation process. Okay. So likewise, similarly, we have once activation is successful, then here we are specifying that 99 is my workflow completion step. So in this case, so you take, so here we are specifying the next step is workflow complete step, but technically we need to close the workflow. So that's where we take this conditional as 4, and corresponding to 4 conditional as, again, SAP provided some process pattern called 99. So when you assign this 99 process pattern, technically system will close that particular workflow. Okay. So similarly, you have something called up here. Once the rollback team withdraws that particular request, that means here, so if at the revision team level, if someone click on withdraw button, then I wanted to initiate a rollback process. Just like how we are initiating the activation process, we need to initiate the rollback process. So when you initiate that rollback process, there is a process pattern 8 is provided. So you need to just simply assign this number. Rest of the process will be taken care by the MDG framework. Similarly, you have condition earlier. Once rollback is completed, we wanted to close the workflow. So that's where for condition alias 8, I'm specifying this 99. So in both the cases, 4 represents successfully activation and then closing the workflow. 8 indicates your workflow is got fully rejected, change request is rejected, and we are closing the workflow. Okay. So these are the two ways that your CR will get closed. Okay. So these are the things that we need to exactly input in the system. Okay. Now let's get into the system. So our change request type is ZP11. Okay. So here go to rule based workflows, and so whatever the steps that we defined over here, right? Like 00 to 99. So first these steps we need to define over here. So this is the place under rule based workflow, you have defined change request step. So change request step or workflow step both are same. Okay. So here for our change request type, so we already defined in the last session those steps. Okay, we just defined the steps. We'll talk about that key and validation checkboxes. Okay, so once you define the steps, the next step is we need to fill the decision tables with this content. Okay, so for that one, this is the place where we configure the rule-based workflows. Okay, so click on configure rule-based workflow. So this is a common place where if at all you are creating the rule-based workflow for material master, business partner, finance, or any custom object or anything. So this is the one place. All you need to do is you need to define one CR type, assign 86 workflow, and then come to this configuration and enter your CR type. Okay. So when you enter your CR type for the first time, system will, when you enter your CR type and click on continue, first time system will generate the required content like this. You can see here. So this is a BRF framework, BRF application framework. So in BRF application framework, it creates a required catalog structure with your change request type. Okay, ending with the change request type, so that this particular structure is very specific to your CR type. Okay, and it also creates some other required, generates some required content for you. And but ultimately our focus is on this one. So the 3 decision tables. Okay, so why we call it as a decision table? Because it is a, like, if this condition met, it will give you the result. So you can see here. So this is your condition columns. This is your result column. Okay. So any decision table, you will have condition column as well as result column. If your condition met, it will return the result column. Okay. So that's why we call it as a decision tables. Okay. So now here, first one is we have something called single value decision table. Okay. In the single value decision table, you can see there are multiple columns are there. When you scroll right, there are totally 14 columns are there here. Okay, so out of these 14 columns, currently I am interested to discuss about only these 5 columns, most important and mandatory columns. The rest of them are optional. We will discuss it later. Okay, so these 5 columns are very, very important first. Okay, now here I cannot see all the 5 columns in a single page. So because I need to scroll left and right to see the content. So what we can do is we can click on edit. Okay, so there is something called table settings button. Okay, so here you can see the previous step, previous action. That is nothing but this one, previous step and previous action. Condition alias you cannot see because there are more columns are there. So you need to scroll right to see the condition alias column, followed by your next step and action status columns, right? So I wanted to hide in between the other columns, optional columns, and we'll discuss it about those later. Okay. So that means he can always click on edit button. There is something called table settings. So when you click on this table settings, it shows the columns are divided into two parts. One is condition columns, other one is the result columns. Okay, so as I mentioned here, you have something called condition columns and result columns. Okay, so in the condition columns, we are interested to see previous step and previous action. So previous step and previous action are there. The other columns are not required for us. Okay, so I wanted to hide these other columns so that I can see the ones which I am interested in a single view. Okay, so that's where you can actually hide this. Let's say change request priority is there. You can drop down, select this option hidden. Okay, so you can hide unwanted columns here. Okay, so now let's click on OK. Now see, you can see all the columns that we are interested in a single, the 5 columns that we are interested, right? In a single view. That's what, okay. So now let's click on, we wanted to fill this table. So you can, there is a button to add the rows. So you can click on this add. Okay, it adds up a row over here. Okay, so now here we need to basically fill this particular data. Okay, so the first one is previous step is 00. Okay, so you can always click on this direct value input. Okay, from F4 here it shows the steps that you assigned, you created for this particular change request type. So from this one you can choose your first step is 00. Okay, click on OK. Now after that you have something called previous action submit. For submit, basically it's always this system will come to this particular, okay, system will actually start looking into this decision table only once the user clicks the submit button. There is no other option. Your workflow will come to this step only when user clicks the submit button, which means you no need to specify here submit button. You can just simply ignore it. There is no need to specify submit button because if controller comes to over here and start looking into this one, that means by that time user already clicked the submit button. There is no other button. So that's why you just leave it blank only for the 00 step. Now after that, we have something called condition alias. So you can always click on this drop down button, choose direct value input and assign 1. Okay. Again, this condition alias is an alphanumeric. It not necessarily always 1, 2, 3. You can have C1, C2, C3, A1, A2, A3, anything, any alphanumeric. Okay. So it can be any alphanumeric because it acts as a linkage between your single validation table versus other 2 decision tables. Okay, so that linkage can happen like C1, here it will be C1 like that. Okay, so that I can actually, it's not, I just use 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can have any alphanumeric number over here. Okay, so I just entered this condition alias. Next, you have the next step. So as per this diagram, the next step is 90. So I can do F4, select 90. Okay, so now here you have something called change request status. So this status. So here these statuses, right? So what happens is now if you do F4 here, SAP already provided some out of box status here. Okay, so some out of box statuses. Either you can use some relevant status that is more appropriate for you. But what we are looking the status is pending with approval. Okay, so this status where it will show you is, let me open the material creation screen. Okay, if we create material in the change request, I'll choose one change request type. Okay, you can see here status. So here it will show this particular status. Okay, so now this is either you can use the standard statuses that it is showing, the if you find relevant status, or if the one that you are looking, right? In our case, what we wanted to keep, we wanted to update here the statuses pending with approval. But we don't see any that pending with approval status over here. So that means it also allows you to create your own status. Okay, where you can create. So go in the under the same workflow, rule-based workflow topic only, not here in the change request tab. Okay, yeah. So when we are talking about the change request, directly we started discussing from here onwards, right? But above that, there is something called a status. So this is the place where you can create some status. Okay, click on this. So these are the 0 to 99. These statuses currently it is showing over there. Okay, default out of box status here. When you do F4, it shows from 00 to 99. So those statuses are coming from here. So we can also create our own status here. Okay, so let's say, for example, I'll click on new entry. The status we can say S1. Okay, we can give some description pending with approval. Okay, so this is the status we can give. Now let me save this. Okay, so here you can see along with the standard statuses, your status also comes over here. Now I'll come back to this point. So once now what happens? So we created this status. Now you can go to your workflow. Let me close, save here. So when you again click on new status here, okay, it's a buffering issue. It is not showing up over here. So it will show when you close this entire stuff and again open, it will show that one. But that's fine. So you can always, if you remember that status, you can enter that value S1. Okay. So when you click on S1, it automatically adds the code. So basically here, S1 indicates the code and this is a description. So you can see here, when you enter the code, it automatically brings up the description as well. Okay. So this status, this description pending with approval is the description that gets displayed over here. Okay. When this request is pending at the approval level, so here it will display pending with approval. Okay. Now coming back to when you're creating, so that's how you can create n number of status. Okay. But one important point is whatever the standard statuses are there, 00 to 99 here, don't change anything here as a description of these particular values. Okay. If you can use this status as is, use it. Or if you tell you wanted to create, if something is not sufficient or not representing the current status for you, then go ahead and create your own new status, but don't modify the existing status. Okay. Why? Because these statuses will be used across all the objects, across all the CR types. So if you change, let's say, for example, this particular status, if you change this description, whoever is using in their workflows the 0 to, so it will automatically get reflected over there as well, your changes. So that's why don't touch the standard ones. Either use as is or create your own status. Okay. Now, after this, you also have here another property. So status means it not only tells you that, okay, what is the current status through this particular description. It also brings some functionality. What is that functionality? So whenever I'm assigning this particular status to my approver here, okay. So when I'm adding this status to the approver, and here you can see there is something called permitted processing. Okay. Under this, there are three possible values are there. So the first one is by default, no processing. So no processing means if you are assigning this to a particular approver, that approver cannot edit the data. That means requester will submit the request. It goes to the approver. At approver level, he don't see any edit option. All he can do is he can review the data. If there are some correction, if no corrections required, he can click on approve button. If corrections required, since he is not able to, he cannot edit the data, he can actually simply reject. He can add some comments and simply reject. Okay. So if at all you wanted to provide flexibility for the approver to correct the data or not, so that decision can be taken here. Okay. When you assign no processing, he cannot basically edit the data, but he can review and approve or reject the data. Okay. And if at all you wanted to give the flexibility for the approver, approver can review and he can correct the data. Then you can use this option, execution of changes. When you assign execution of changes, approver can correct the data and he can take action as well. Okay. The next one, change of object list. So change of object list is when you are assigning this particular, especially this status with this property, basically status with this property will be used in case of mass processing. In case of mass processing, what happens is when you define a CR type with a mass processing enabling checkbox, then mass processing means under one change request, you can add thousands of materials or thousands of objects. Okay, so requester created a mass CR with maybe let's say 100 materials in it. Now when it goes to approver can see all the 100 materials. Or when he opens the CR, he will see all the 100 requests, see all the 100 objects under that particular CR. Now, there might be some cases where approver want to exclude some materials or some objects from that list. Out of 100, these 5 materials are not required. These materials, we no need to do changes for these 5 materials. Then approver wants to, if approver from that list, if approver wants to delete some records, okay, or else he wanted to add more records, okay, that's where this change of object list property come into picture. Okay, so if you assign this change of object list, especially this property will be used, the status that with this property will be used only in case of mass processing. And in case of mass processing, it gives the capability for the approver to add or delete more objects from the change request. Okay, and along with that one, he can correct the data as well. Okay, so that way I will show you when we are dealing with the mass processing. Okay, so but when you are defining a status, you can provide some valid description to that one and take a call where by default no processing will be there. If approver wants to edit, then only you can assign this execution of changes. Otherwise, you can just keep it no processing only. Okay, so that's why I said don't change the existing standard out of box status, because if you change, let's say this 104, this status, if you change from no processing to execution of changes, then what happens is approver can edit the data. So if this status is being used somewhere, for that scenario also it will get impacted. So that's why we usually don't touch that one. If any of the existing one are okay for you to use it. Otherwise, create your own statuses. That's it. Okay. So fine. So with that, we just completed one row. Okay, so this is completed. Now the next one is 90 approve and reject. So let's add one more row. When you click on add row, if that row gets added here, what you can do is you can just move it down. There are up and down arrows are there, right? We can do that one. Okay. So, okay. So basically you can add a new row and you can move up and down using these buttons. Okay. So the next one is 90 approve. So 90 previous action will be for approve. So likewise, we need to just keep on adding this. In case of approval, the next step is 91 activation conditional yes to. So again, here we wanted to add some status. Okay. So this activation is a background process. So you don't feel, even though if you assign some status, that won't get, it cannot see the status over here, because when I click on approve button, it automatically changes. I mean, it initiates in the backend that activations process, and then automatically that it will go to the next step. That is nothing but workflow completion thing, right? So in that case, you actually really use any status, whatever is there. Okay, let's say for example, if nothing is there, what we can do is we can create one more status here. I'm just giving activation is in progress. So this is also done. Now I can add here S2. Okay, activation in progress. So likewise, I just need to fill all these remaining entries as well. So let me fill this quickly. Okay, so here we have something called it goes to the revision step, right? So let's see if any status is there. To be revised will be there, to be revised. So that at approver, when reviewer opens, he will see the status to be revised. So in between, you can save this so that your changes won't get lost. This is also done. Now activation. So 91 here, what we are looking is activation success. So here there is something called, so this one activation success. In case of activation successful, it should go to 99. So always here, the status we should towards at 99, the last status should be always final check approved. So that will be there 05 status and check approved. Okay, so this is done. So now I wanted to add the next row, activation failure, right? So there is a other option. You can click on new row and add it, or else there is an option to copy this row as well. So click on this copy and paste. So that's how it will get added.
Hey, you know, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features: bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
Now you can change here. Okay. So now I just wanted to show that this copy paste option is also there. You can select a row and do copy paste, which is fine. Now after that, now look at this next one, activation failure. So activation failure. So for activation failure, there are two ways that you can mention. One is for this one, click on this. Okay. So there is a 32 here. You can see 32. 32 says it's an activation failed. Okay. So this is fine. Activation success, activation failure. Okay. Now the other way how I can mention this one is if you click on this, you can say not equal to. So there is an operator here. You can find the list of operators is not equal to 31, because some people will say like this, some people will say 31, some people will say 32, or some will say not equal to 31. Okay. So both are same. It's up to you which option. I just wanted to show you that relative operators are also there. Okay. Now after this, here conditional yes will be high. In case of activation failure, we wanted to take it to 90. Okay. So when it goes to 90, basically this is your approver step only. Okay. So either you can assign the same status S1 here like this, S1 pending with approver, because you are at it goes to the approver. The other one is you can create your own status like S3 and say activation failed, retry kind of thing, so that it differentiates for the approver. When he opens that, he will see wherever pending with approver is there, it is coming from requester step. Wherever activation failed and retry, that means he can indicate that it is coming through activation failure process. Okay. So that's up to you. How do you mention the step? Just for consistent purpose, I'm just keeping it S1 only in both the cases. Okay. So this is done. Now we have something called 92 resubmit and with 92 here you will have resubmit. In case of resubmit, it goes to again 90 only with the same status. So for withdraw also here you have. So in case of withdraw, we wanted to initiate the rollback step. Next step is rollback. Okay, here you can say rollback is in progress or some, because anyway you cannot see that status. You can assign any dummy status as well over here. Is there anything? So let's create one status. So if you are trying to create this workflow, right? So you can use my status, whatever I created. You don't need to create again new status. Okay, so this is the one. Now after that, the final entry here from 93 to 99, and here it's a final check rejected, because that is the end state. You can see final check rejected. So this is done. Let's save. Okay, fine. Now if I scroll. Okay, so this is exactly what we discussed in the Excel. So exactly the same I updated over here. Okay, so now once you fill this data in the decision table, maybe you can click on this check button. It's a kind of syntax check. If there are any errors, you can ignore these warning messages. Okay, and then finally, currently this is in inactive mode. You see, this is not in green color, this decision table, because we modified something. Once all your changes are done, you need to click on activate button. Click on this activate button. So now this will turn into green. That means this decision table is now active. Okay. Any questions on this?
No.
Okay. So are we good? This decision table. So you are clear with this decision table, right? So whatever we discussed earlier. So I just same thing. I just updated over here. The new learning here. That's how to create this status. That's the only thing. Okay. Now, once this is done, let's fill this user agent decision table. Now you can go to the same user agent decision table. Okay. So here I click on edit new row. Okay. So here conditional yes is 1. So take the conditional as one. Okay. User agent group. So this user agent group we didn't discuss. Okay. So here that I just left this intentionally blank. We didn't discuss about this user agent group. There is no significance at this point of time. This will be used in case of parallel workflow. Okay. So that time I will introduce, we'll discuss more about this one. For now, agent group, we can keep it any like 001. You can keep it something like this. Okay, so there is no significance because it's a mandatory. You need to fill some data. So just keep it 001. But the actual usage we will discuss in the parallel workflow scenario. Okay, so now for the conditional alias, here, as I mentioned, first we'll come back to this step type. So we need to assign the agents who will be the approver. So when you click on this agent type here, you see some options. So all these options are shown earlier when we discussed about the 40 workflow also. In case of 40 workflow also, you have US user, which indicates user, O indicates organization, C indicates job, S indicates position. So this first four we discussed. This is there in your single standard workflow, 40 workflow as well. Okay. So if you specify here use US, that means here the next column you need to provide the valid SAP user ID. Okay. Similarly, again, the job is also you need to create that in PPO-ME structure where you can define the organization units, jobs, positions. That value you need to provide over here. Okay. Now, apart from that, the most important one here, the advantage of, or the new stuff that we get over here is role. Okay. So this is more useful for us. Okay. So you can create some role in PFCG. Basically, security will create a role, and that role if you assign to a particular user. So now or one user or multiple users. So here when you select here a role. Okay. So when you select a role, you need to provide your valid that SAP role. Okay. So that means this way you can represent approvers can be multiple, either it can be single approver or multiple approvers. Okay. So most of the time we use this role in the projects. So we create some security team will create some role, business role, and that business role will be assigned to some group of people. And when you specify here the role and the role name over here, the users can basically the when you assign a here role, that role will be, this work item will be assigned to all the users under that particular role. So that is the advantage we get it with this particular role. Okay. Now, for now, because we don't have all that roles and everything, for testing purpose, I'll just use US only. So, and I'll assign my user ID. So I'll use my user ID. Okay. So this is fine. So we assigned the user ID. So basically, this is the approver for this particular step. Now, next coming back to this step type. So this step type is also a mandatory information here. Now what this step type will tell you is that, okay, so what options you wanted to show it to this particular user when he opens this change request. Okay, so that is what actually we can basically what options, what actionable buttons you wanted to give it to the user that you can actually configure over here. How you can configure it basically. Okay, so in SAP here, SAP provided some out of box step types. Step type. Okay. So let's say if the step type is 2 is a number. Under this particular number, there will be 2 actions associated with this number. Okay. So when I assign this step type 2 here, so for that particular user, he will see these 2 buttons. So these are the actions. These are nothing but actions. Actions are grouped under something called step type. Okay. So if you assign 2 step type, these 2 actions, these 2 actionable buttons will be displayed on the UI. Now let's see in the system where you can find all these out of box step types. Okay. So under the same rule based workflow, you can see here under workflow, there is something called change request, step types, and assign actions. You will find the individual actions over here in this configuration, nothing but your reject. Okay. So these are again out of box actions are already pre-populated. Okay. So here you will find 01, 02. So you can have either agree, disagree buttons, approve, reject buttons, finalize processing, send for revision, resubmit with activate, send for revision. Likewise. So these are the individual actions are defined over here. And this is what it shows on the button label. Okay. Now these actions are grouped under step type. You can, if you open the next configuration, step type. Okay. So this is what the step type. Now see, SAP created this step type 2. Now when you select this step type 2, if you go further down, so these are the two actions are assigned to that one. Okay. So now this step type 2 contains these two buttons. Now if I assign this particular step type 2 here, okay, what happens is for the approver, this is the approver and this is the step type 2. System will take this step type 2 and look at what are the actionable buttons are there under this step type 2 from this particular configuration. Okay, these two buttons are there. So those two buttons will be displayed on the UI. Okay, for those two actions. So what happened now? It displays approve and reject buttons to the user. Now user clicks on approve button. We handled that approve scenario over here, 90 plus approve. If user clicks on reject button, you are handling here 90 reject. Okay, so whatever the step type 2 you are assigning here, I mean, it can be 2 or any step type. Okay, corresponding to that step type, the actions are listed over here. Only those actions you need to handle over here. Let's say you assign some step type here. Let's say, for example, this is very important. Okay, so let's say you assigned 3 step type there. What 3 contains? 3 has finalized processing and sent for revision. So here you, if you assign 3, okay, let's say for example 3 step type, it has finalized processing and send for revision. Okay, so if you assign this particular step type, these two buttons will be, user will be seeing, and user can click on either this button or this button. So that means at 90 step, if he clicks finalize processing, and here you are handling 90 and approve, then your workflow will get into an error. Why? Because system will start looking into, okay, 90 plus finalized processing, and there is no entry. It won't find any entry over here. So your workflow will get into an error. So whatever the actions that we are assigning over here to this particular 90 step, it should be in line with the step type 2 that you are assigning, or any step type that you are assigning. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So you just ensure you are assigning some step type. Under step type, what actions are there? Only handle those actions here, not anything else. Because if I go to, I'll save here, single validation table, edit. If I click on this approve, this F4, here you will see complete list of actions. You will find finalize processing, send for revision, then approve reject, activate send for revision, agree disagree, everything is there. But you need to choose whatever is relevant for you, or that is in line with the step type that you selected there. Okay, so that is very important. Otherwise, your workflow will get into error state. So here I'll assign step type 2. Okay, step type 2 is also there. Fine. So now if you look at this, the other cases 5 and 6 cases also, what happens? It goes to your 90 only. Just like, so basically what I'm trying to say, your condition alias 1, condition alias and 5 and 6. So in all these 3 cases, the next step is 90 only. So which means technically 1, 5, 6 should have the same entries in your user agendation table. 1, 5, 6, because all these 3 are for your approval step only, right? In this day here, I just denoted with 2 separate rows, 5 and 6. But you can club 1, 5, 6 also in a, I'll show you how to club that one. So what you can do is you can just click on this, go to this direct value input. There is a change button, click on change, insert include condition. I'm just showing different options. I can click on a new row and add those 3 rows separately. There is no issue. Absolutely, it works fine. But you can also do something differently like this. Insert include condition. It adds an OR condition. Okay. So in OR, so what are the other 5 and 6? So you can add here 5. Again, one more insert include 6. So this is how you can represent club multiple rows into a single row. In case of 1, 5, 6, step type is 2. It goes to the approver, this approver. Is this clear how what is the significance or how we have done this one. Okay. So after this, this is the send for revision team 3, conditional yes 3. So you can add that, you can add club with this one. So you can add it as a separate row. This is 3. Here you can assign same or different agent group. So let's put some 002. Okay. So now we are at the revision step. In this diagram, we are at the revision step. At the revision step, I wanted to show resubmit and withdraw options. Okay. So for resubmit and withdraw option also, there is a separate step type. See, revision change request. If you go to the assign actions, resubmit and withdraw options are there. That means I need to use this step type 4 here. Step type 4. Okay. So these are two only. Okay. So step type 4, let me use step type 4 so that at the revision team, they will see that withdraw, revision and resubmit and withdraw options. So we'll use step type 4. Okay. So this remains same. I'll choose user and my user ID only here. ZSAP. Okay, fine. So with this one, let's just save it. And you need to activate your decision table. So decision table is also active. So we completed the second decision table as well. So here, the one which we discussed is step type. So what is step type that we discussed? Okay, so now let's go to non-user agent decision table. User agent decision table, edit, new. So conditional yes is 2. This is for the activation. Okay, so what happens? Requester submitted, it went to approver. Approver click on approve button. Then the next step is 91, which is an activation process. But this is just a step ID. But we need to assign something technically to this step so that it actually executes the activation process. That is nothing but you need to take the conditional yes 2. And here for 2 conditional yes, you can assign a process pattern. Okay. So this is your 2 conditional yes. When you go to this process patterns, here there is a column for process pattern. Okay. 2F4. These are the out of box process patterns that SAP provided. Okay. So each process pattern in the backend associate certain code. Okay. Now let's take example of activation. So what happens when you assign 05 or 06, both the cases, this is for activation process. Now when you assign 5 or 6, what happens exactly? Okay. So let's see. Requester submitted, it went to approver clicked on approve button. Then the next step is activation process. Initiate the activation step, take the conditional yes, come to this non-user agent decision table. Here it will look up the next process pattern is 5. Then when framework sees this process pattern 5, what happens exactly? So there is a business object type SWO1. The business object type is bus2250. Okay. If I click on display, it has the methods activate underscore 2. So this method will get executed. Activate underscore 2 method will get executed. So when you assign the process pattern here 5 or 6, in both the cases, this method will get executed. Okay. So this method in turn, it calls if it is a reuse mode object. Let's say if you are activating material master, then there is this activation method, what it will do, it doesn't have the actual logic. What it will do is it will delegate inside this. It will look at what is the current object from the change request. It will identify, are you trying to activate a material or are you trying to activate a business partner, customer, vendor, cost center, finance object. And accordingly, what will happen is it will call the respective access class save method. What is access class? What is access class? I'll show you. Okay. So you take example of material master data model, edit data model. If I'm not on mute, right? Okay. So take material master. It's a reuse mode. So that means this is the active area. Material is the active area. Go to reuse active area corresponding to this material. This is the access class. So take this class. Okay. And go to SC24. And if you open this class, there is a method called save. This method will get executed. Save method. So inside save method, it has the logic to read the data from your staging and call the material doc API to create the material in your active area. Okay, so this entire process get triggered. Okay, that means basically what I'm trying to say, your process pattern 5 executes this activate underscore 2 method. Okay, and inside this activate 2 method, it will read what is the current object, and from there it will identify the, if it is a reuse mode, it will identify the right access class, and from that right access class it will run that particular save method. Okay, so that this is one example of activation. Similarly, you have something called for rollback 08. For rollback also there will be a method here in your business object rollback 2. Okay, so based on whatever, and similarly there is something called validation. Where is that data replication? Validate 07. For that one also there is a method here, validate method. Okay, so likewise for every action, every process pattern, there is a, from the business object there is a method associated with that one. That method will get executed. Okay, so those are the, just for your knowledge purpose, so that you can debug that in future. Okay, but for you now, you need to choose, you need to know what are these, maybe we don't actually use all these process patterns, we use very few regularly. One is this activation method, rollback method we use regularly, and even the workflow complete as well, workflow complete as well. Okay, so this is fine. Now when it comes to activation, right, so there are two methods are there, two process patterns are there. Activation, do not bypass snapshot. Activate, bypass snapshot. So now what is the difference between these two process patterns? Which should I use for activation process? I hope you all are with me right till now. We are going to discuss, there are for activation there are two process patterns are there. Which one I should use? Should I use 05 or 06? Okay, so in the last session also we discussed there are two process patterns are there, both are for activation process only. So which one we should use here? That's the question. Okay, so let's understand what is the difference between these two. Okay, so this is your MDG system, this is your active area, this is your staging table. Okay, now in your active area there is a material called 100 material number, and material description currently is ABC. Okay, so this is a record, active record that you have in your active area. Okay, now you got a requirement saying that someone asked you to change this particular material description ABC to XYZ. So what will happen initially? You, when you try to edit that existing record through MDG UI application, this 100 record gets stored into your staging table with the description ABC. Okay, it created a CR. Let's say it created some CR1. Now the user changed the description from ABC to XYZ. Okay, the CR is not yet approved. Okay, now tell me what is the description in my active area at this point of time. Someone modified this description from ABC to XYZ and it went for the approval. This CR they submitted. It is pending with the approver here. Is not yet approved. Okay. Now, do you see two different descriptions? One description XYZ in your staging and ABC in your active area, right? Is this correct? Two descriptions are there, two different descriptions. Your active record contains ABC and your staging record contains XYZ description. Okay. So now this is pending with this, these changes are pending with this approver. Okay. So now what happens? This record is there, my active record. As the description with my in my active record, the description still shows it as ABC only, because the changes are not moved to my active area. Once the CR get activated, then only the change will come over here. Now in between, what happened is there's a user, okay, who is having access to MM02. He opened the same material. He changed the description directly in your ERP layer from ABC to, let's say, DEF. Okay, which means currently in my active record contains the description DEF. Okay, so this is my current description because the person already modified directly without CR process. Directly he modified in my through MM02 or by some other program. By some other means not through MDG. He modified the description without MDG directly in your active area with description ABC to DEF. Okay. Now in your staging record, you have the description XYZ, and in your active area, you have the description DEF. Okay. So once if this particular change request CR1 gets activated or final approval approved and this CR gets activated, right? So ideally this XYZ should come and update, replace with this DEF, right? So what should happen? What is the expected behavior in this case? Should this particular XYZ should go and update this DEF or it should not update DEF? You got the point? What I'm trying to say here?
Yes.
So you are expecting this after CR approval, what will be the value of my material description in my active area? It should be DEF or XYZ. What is the expected behavior?
XYZ.
XYZ. So basically what you are saying is DEF should get override with XYZ, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is one option. That could be one possibility. Okay. So one possibility is override the value. No matter what value is there in my current ERP, but if something coming from my MDG change request process, it should go and override. That is one possibility. This is one valid case. The other scenario could be business says that why this person logged into MM02 and modified, because this might be some urgent issue or some, I mean, this is the right value. He don't have any time to wait till that CR get approved, right? So that's where on immediate basis, he modified the value to DEF. That means this is a right value. Don't override whatever the value is there XYZ. Don't override here. If something is already modified. So basically here what happened when this CR gets created, the description is ABC. But when this CR is getting activated, the description is not same that is there. The description modified by someone else, which means that there is a difference in the snapshot. Okay, so when in this case, some business says that don't override. So both are valid cases, override and don't override. Okay, so depends on your business needs, depends on your business requirement. This ideally, this is the right use case. This is what it should happen. We are not supposed to modify anything in the backend. Any changes that should come from MDG only. So in this case, XYZ is coming, update is coming from MDG. That is the correct update. So go and override. This is what the expected behavior. But sometimes what business says, I also have some other means where it should get failed, right? So that means your activation process should get failed in this case. Okay, so in that case, so activation process should get failed means how it will get failed, because your MDG framework first will copy the snapshot of the original value before CR creation, and at the time of activation, it will compare that snapshot. If both snapshots are different, that means just like ABC and DEF in this case, fail your CR. That means CR activation should get failed. Okay. Now that is what the difference here. If you look at here, when you say 05, that indicates by 06 always indicates bypass snapshot. Bypass snapshot means override directly. I don't care whatever the value is there in my active area. Whatever comes from MDG, that should take the preference and override that record. If you use 06, it never compares the snapshot. Whatever the value is there in your ECC or your underlying ERP, that value will get overwritten with your MDG changes. If you use this one, that means do not bypass snapshot. So the snapshot means system keeps a reference of old value and new value. If both are not matching, fail your CR. So if you use 05, in this case, what happens is your change request will get failed. Okay. And in the log, you will see the message that failed because of snapshot difference. Okay, so that is the difference between 05 and 06. So 99% all the time we go with 06, bypass snapshot and override. But there might be some cases where if business comes up with this kind of requirements, then only we use 05. And also 05 is if someone says.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
Okay, but otherwise, as per MDG standards or MDG principles, all the data updates should come from MDG. Why there is a snapshot difference? Why the person modified not through MDG by other means? So that has to discuss. Okay, but that is a difference between 05 and 06. Is this clear to all of you?
Yes.
Okay, great. So agent group is nothing but the same. You can keep any dummy value 001. We will use this at a later stage. In non-user agent, this doesn't make any sense. Actually, this is an optional. Okay, so fine. So we completed this. Next, in case of 4 and in case of 9, this is successful activation. This is the rollback process. In both the cases, I wanted to call the process pattern 99, which will close my workflow. That means I can club these 4 and 8 rows here. So how to club that? You can click on create new. Okay, use here 4 and insert include condition, add 8 as well. So it's a 4 or 8. In both the cases, in case of 4 or 8, use some any dummy agent group 002. So I wanted to, you need to link that the process pattern 99. Okay, so there is a process pattern 99 which actually calls your workflow. Sorry, closes your workflow. Okay, 99. So this is also done. 4 and 8. Finally, you're left with 7 conditional yes 7. So this 7 conditional yes, so 7 conditional yes is basically for the rollback process to initiate the rollback. So rollback change request is there. Okay, so this is also done. So non-user agentation table is also done. Save, activate. Okay. So non-user agentation table is also done. Okay. So with this, we just populated all the 3 decision tables. So any questions before we get into that system demo? Are we good with what is this single value user agent, non-user agent, how we populated? We discussed about the statuses, how to create our own status and assign. At the status level, there are 3 different options are there. No processing, permitted change of object, and execution of changes, change of object list. So those 3 properties are also there. Then we discussed about step type. We also discussed about different type of process patterns. Okay. So if you are clear, so our decision tables are also completed. Now let's see the demo for this one. Okay. So when I try to create new, so I wanted to use the second one. So this first one is which uses the standard workflow 40 that has 2-step approval process. Second one is a rule-based workflow that 86 workflow get executed. That is nothing but like 1-step approval process. So we can choose this. Okay. Click on OK. So I'll just enter some material. So let me add some. I'm just not maintaining any plant data because that we already saw that you can add on plants. Okay, but let me just enter some data here now. Okay, oh my god, why this submit option is not coming for this one? So probably submit option is not coming because any guess? So submit option is now you see here, right? Submit is not coming. Why? Because but to trigger your workflow, you need to have a submit. As per this, our workflow diagram also, user has to click on submit button. Then only your workflow gets started. But I don't see the submit option here. Okay. The reason is in this one, for this change request type which I'm using, I didn't mention it as a single object. Okay. Because this is meant for this CR type is used for single object which we created. So you need to select this checkbox. Okay. So select this particular checkbox, save it. Okay. So this is done. Now I'll close this. Let me execute this again. Okay. Just and now I see this is a submit button. So once I click on this submit button, workflow gets triggered and it should go to the next step, right? So what is the next step here? Approver. Okay. So I'll click on submit. Now workflow got triggered. It went to approver step. So if I do a refresh, workflow is being processed. Now it went to the approver step, and at approver step, so you can see this is the status that we assigned pending with approver, and what we use the step type 2. For step type 2, the buttons it is showing approve and reject. Okay. Now I can click on approve button or I can click on reject button. So if I click on reject button, where it should go, and what options it should display at that level. Okay. So if I click on from approve or if I click on reject, it will go to the revision step, and at revision step we use the process pattern 0 for step type we use 0 for, where it will have two options, resubmit and withdraw. Okay, let's see that. I'll click on reject button. It asks for some rejection reasons. Okay, now it went to revision step. So I do a refresh. Now see, it is to be revised. This is the status we assigned at the revision step level in the single value. Okay, so you can see this is the one. If approver click on reject button, it goes to revision team. The status we are showing is to be revised. Okay, so to be revised is the status it is coming up, and we assign the 04 step type, so which contains this resubmit and withdraw. So I can again click on resubmit. When you click on resubmit, again it will go to approver. See, it went to approver with approve pending with approver. Okay, so this is what happens. Revision, resubmit, it goes to approver. From approver, I can actually, again, this time I'll approve this request. It initiates that workflow, it initiates the activation workflow. Okay, see, workflow completed, the status set to final check approved. The change request status is also completed. Okay, now you can see this data, this particular data in your staging table with active record. Our data model is ZT. Okay, so if I go to staging table, execute. So this is the record we just created, C pump 1. You can see this is the record we just created. Okay, and this record is active because the workflow is approved and activation process initiated, the record got approved. Okay, so this is how your rule-based workflow works. Now, okay, so any questions on this? Is this clear to all of you? How to prepare this or configure workflow using this 86 workflow, rule-based workflow? Any questions on this?
No. Okay.
No.
Okay. So now, if you look at the change request type and workflow and all these things, right? So if whoever is not created the data model and all that stuff, so of course I created the change request type for our custom object. Okay, but you can if someone is not created the data model and UI model, still you can go ahead and start your hands-on from change request type as well. How do? You can go to this change request type. Now there is some standard CR type is there for material master. Okay, so you can assume that this is the one. What you can do is you can copy this change request type, okay, into some something Z, okay, mat 01 or mat so zmat 01, something like that. Okay, here just give me 1 minute. Sorry. Okay, so what we are saying, what I'm trying to say here is, even though if you don't create the data model and UI application for the custom object, still you can work with, you can try creating the change request type for the standard data model, material master data model. Okay, so for that one, you can copy one of the standard change request type, just like how I copied. Okay, you can change here, let's say to create material, I'll just put here, for example, rule-based workflow, something like this. Okay, and rest keep everything over here. Ensure you have this 86 workflow and business activity and everything will remain same. Just enter. Okay, so it copy all. So it will copy all the entries. Okay, you can save it. So likewise, you can create a change request type for any standard objects as well. Okay, so what it says, you assign 86 workflow for Z change request type that we created, but there are no steps defined, which is fine. Okay, so that means we need to create the steps. Now take this change request type. Okay, just have a look at the other business activities. It is mat1, which is for material create. So all that information anyway will get copied. Now you have your own change request type. All you need to do is create something like this. Maybe if you are looking for one-step approval process, so you can actually identify something like this, and you need to define the steps. So where do you write the steps over here? You can go to this one. Okay, so you can define the steps over here. So click on this for your change request type, just like how I created. So for our change request type, Okay, you can create something like this with ZMAT01. With ZMAT01, define the steps over here. Okay, or else you can just copy simply these ones and do a copy and change the change request type if you are trying to build similar kind of workflow. So once this is done, then you can actually go back to your configure rule based workflow, click on over here, enter your new change request type, that is nothing but your ZMAT01, and click on continue. Then it will generate the 3 decision tables and everything. Okay, so there you can configure how we have done these 3 decision tables. You can configure, because when you're configuring these decision tables, right, basically in the backend we are not talking about the underlying object is or BP or what. It's a generic one. So here you are having, as of now, these 3 decision tables are very generic. It the same decision tables you can fill for any CR type for your ZMAT01 as well. Okay. And from the CR type, it will understand what is the object, whether it is a customer or business partner, what is the object. Okay. So whatever we discussed, the same way you can create a CR type for customer, vendor, or business partner, or cost center, profit center. For any object, you can do it for that. Okay. You can define a CR type, define the change request steps, and start configuring this one. So once you do, so then you go to, when you go to your material, let's say you created a CR type for material. Okay. So then when you go to create material, okay. So when you do F4, your new CR type also will start appearing. See, this is what we just created, ZMAT01. Okay. So that means basically if someone is lagging behind the stuck at data model level or UI model level, to, because these workflows, you have to try at least one workflow with one step and all that stuff, right? So you can actually start creating the change request type for your material master and start building that decision tables and everything, and see, do a test, like select this CR type and start building that end-to-end scenario and see how the material gets created. Is this clear? Can I expect from each one of you some CR types, custom CR types? So this is what we call it as a custom CR type. Custom CR type with some workflow by end of this week, maybe by Friday. Okay. So that's how you can actually create change request types for any object for Though I explained it for custom data model, custom object, but you can create for standard data models as well. Okay. So there is nothing specifically that you need to learn for standard objects again and again on that one. Okay. So this is about the one basic workflow, how to configure in 80 using 86 workflow. Okay. So now if you are comfortable with this, filling these 3 decision tables to populate this for a one step approval process using 86 workflow. Okay. So now the next scenario is, okay. So basically let me just copy these ones, or else I'll do a copy. Okay. So this is a workflow one, which we discussed. Now here, now by looking at this one, I have a requirement where I wanted to build this workflow. Requester, then approver one, approver two, activation, and workflow complete. Approver one can reject or approver two can reject. Here you'll have something called revision. Okay, this is submit, approve. This is also approve. This is reject. This is also reject. And here he can resubmit, withdraw, roll back, then workflow complete. Okay. So what is the difference between the previous scenario and this scenario? Previous approval and this approval, is there any difference or both are same? It's a two-step approval process. If you look at this previous one, you have one approver. After approval, directly you are having activation. Whereas here, approver and approves, it goes to approver 2, and approver 2, it goes to the activation. So there is one additional approver is there in between. So the previous one is example for one step approval process. This is example for two step approval process. Now here, that means you need one, this is your approver one step, approver one. Okay, wait. Okay. Now we need to introduce here one more step. Let's say the unused one, I'll say A2 this time. Okay. It will be approver 2. So A2 is nothing but just like how you have 1991. This is another, okay, another step. A2. So this is a new one. I wanted to highlight this, okay, in a different color. So just you need one additional step. Okay. So now after that, you tell me here, Requester submitted, it went to approver 1. Approver 1 approves. What should be the next step?
Goes to the next level of approver 2.
So it goes to approver 2. That means basically here from approver 2, we wanted to go to activation step. So here it will be condition alias 9. Once approver approves, it should go to. So what is the step here? What
A2.
number I should? A2. Yes. Okay. A2. Okay. So here pending with approver 2. Okay. So this is the change. If you understand the previous one, this will be just easy. We are just enhancing it. Okay. Now approver 2 approves. Okay. If approver 2 approves, okay, fine. So here what I'll do is I'll insert. So if approver, in case approver rejects, it should go to revision step only. So this I'll keep it here. Okay. So there is no change. So we covered approver 1, approve and reject scenarios. Then now the next is it should go. Now we need to handle approver 2, same approve and
Activation
reject.
step.
Approve and reject. Okay, yeah, you are right. So basically here you need to handle activate. Okay, and here
Reject.
wait. So approver 2, basically here you can have the same buttons or you can have activate and reject buttons as well. It's up to you. Okay, so let's make some difference here. This is activate button and I'll add reject button. Okay, so here so approver 2 clicks on activate button, then it goes to the activation step. Okay, and if approver 2 clicks on reject button, it should go to the revision team. Revision team is nothing but the same one. So you already handled for approver 1, so the same you can copy paste here as well. Okay, but yeah, so this is also again new one. So basically this is also new one. Okay, so that's it. Okay, in case of activation failure, we are assigning here to the approver 190. But in this case, what you can do is you can assign it to either 90 or you can assign it to 92. That means in case of activation failure, either usually we assign it to the immediate approver, that is nothing but A2. Currently there you have something called 90 approver 1. So it's up to you. It's not necessary always you should go to approver 2, but usually the immediate approver will send it to immediate approver. Okay, but let it be there, no issues. This is also fine. Okay, so now we just update. Now we enhanced our single validation table to suit that for the two-step approval process. Okay, so now there is one. Yeah, I think this is fine. Okay, this is fine. Now, so what you need to do is you need to basically here approver 2. When it goes to approver 2, at approver 2 you need to assign some agents. That means for A2 condition alias is 9. So you need to add over here in user agentation table. This is 9 condition alias. Okay. Here you tell me what is the step type I need to use. Should I use 2 or something else?
But 3, right? Finalize processing your sent for revision.
So here you need to use the step type which has these two options, activate and reject, right? Because for approver 2, I'm giving here we are handling activate and reject. So here you should use that step type. So let's find where is that step type. What is the step type number? So you can define change request step types. So there is a activate. Yeah. So this is the step type 5. For 5, you have options activate and send for revision. That means here you should handle activate, send for revision. Okay. So here 5 step type options are activate, send for revision. Okay. So basically here these two, right? So the step type is 5. You need to use 5. Why we are not using you? If you use that two same step type, here you need to change to approve and reject. If you are assigning this 5, you can actually handle that. So basically, as I discussed earlier, whatever the step type that you are assigning over here, you need to handle the actions accordingly. That's what. Okay. So now this is how it rest everything remains same. There's no difference. Okay. So basically, this is how you can enhance the one-step approval process to two-step approval process. Maybe if you create first, try to create for one-step approval process, maybe for material master for your own object, see how it works. If try to run all the scenarios, one time approve, one time reject and everything, if it works perfectly fine, then you can create another CR type. Okay, which assign the same 86 workflow, then create it for two-step approval process. If you do one step and two-step approval process, that's it. You will 60 to 70% you are done with these rule-based workflows. Of course, there are other scenarios are there which we will discuss like email handling. There are different use cases are there. So this is without writing any single line of code, just a plain workflows. Here the focus is how to create one step, how to create two step, how to create three step. We will discuss other business use cases like you wanted to send some emails or you wanted to do some other logic. So different kind of scenarios. Okay. So where some ABAP logic we need to write. So those scenarios we will discuss within the same workflow. Okay. Now looking at this same, like I'll again go back to the one step approval process. One final question, but if at all I wanted to make it auto approval scenario, tell me what is the change that I need to do in this one auto approval scenario.
After submitting the first step, directly 99 we need to hit.
99.
Final check approve. 99 success case.
99 is, see, once the submit, before 99 is just technically closes the workflow. What about the activation? You want to skip the activation?
No.
You are on the right path only. You are thinking correctly, but just you need to refine, think little bit more. Look at this diagram. Now tell me, request is submitted. I wanted to take it through auto approval process. What you need to do in this diagram? You tell me. After
we need to
requester, what should be the next step?
is I think 91. After activation, we will complete our workflow, maybe 99.
Exactly. So you just need to remove this step. That's it. Okay. Which means, look at here, request is submitted. Instead of assigning it to the approver, just directly call that activation step, right? So from submission to activation step to workflow complete 99. That's it. It will be something like this. So now if I show you the diagram, you should be able to prepare or design that workflow. So it's a requester, requester submits, activation, success, your workflow will be completed. In case activation fails, you can send it back to requester. And from requester, we should give that in case of it goes to fail, right? So probably if required, we can again deal with this withdraw option, roll back, and then workflow complete. This is also can be done. Okay. So basically the point is, what is your next step? Depends on that it follows. Clear, right? This one also. Okay, so if this is clear, just try to practice on the workflow stuff. And it also, if you try to create a new CR type for your material master or anything, it helps you to like hands-on for your change request type, how to create a change request type and 86 workflow configuration as well. So both will be done. Okay. And we will go further deeper into the same rule-based workflow and we will discuss some more other topics as well within the rule-based workflow. So any questions? Are we good?
Created the UI model, but the data model is not appearing in the. Can you please once check that?
Yeah, we can check right away. Just give me a minute. I'll share my screen. Okay, so here.
We are also getting the session file dump. Okay. Right clicking on the OVP.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your data model?
There are too many data models we have created. ZM, ZR, YM. Now take YM.
This is your data model. Okay, so this is active entity types, relationships. So fine. You didn't select this as a root. It should be root. Okay, so
activate the data.
Yeah, I'll activate this data model. These are already created and it logged under a different request, logged under request of user. Okay, so you can activate it basically. I don't have whatever the TR you used, right? My user ID is not there. That's invisible. Okay, so let me
can you
go back.
activate it via package using your result?
No. You need to activate from here only.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so what you can do is, let me see the data model. You can activate basically that should be your root object. That's why it is not coming up over there. So YM data model. Okay, I think my changes are not saved. Just select that type 1 as this as. Okay, it's root only. Some buffer issue probably. You just select that as a root object. Okay, activate the data model. Then create a copy fresh UI application from the OVP gen. Is that fine?
Yeah. And I have the same issue with root entity also, but now it is when I'm deleting the old one and created a new one, it got assigned.
Okay.
Don't know why it is like that.
But YM is coming right here. You create this files.
No, not that one.
But whatever currently I did this YM, right? So this is coming up. It is linked properly.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is fine. This is good to go. Yeah, fine. You can just see that activate the data model anyway. We change the data model, right? So activate it once.
Yeah. And one more question. I have only one SU type only. I didn't created any SU type 4. I just created a UI model in that. Do we need to add C or wire using that one? No, right?
Yeah, for the type 1 you need to add, not for type 4. For every UIVB, right? So for your type 1 you need to create that. Okay, so what I mean to say for type 1, if you go through that recording, I added 2 wires. Okay.
Yeah.
So one wire for type 1, one wire for type 4. So just maintain for type 1 only wire. That's it.
And there is one more setting at the details button when we click on details and add CR wire, right?
That is a communicator setting. So that is mandatory. That also you have to do it. Irrespective of your number of entities, for your CR, you need the CR UIVB, right? So that CR wire thing, communicator setting, you have to do it.
Yeah.